Well, hello everyone. Welcome to DISC 201 training. This is our second in a series of 3. Today's topic is resolving conflict, and my name is Cheryl Lee Davis, and I'm the Vice President for Women's Connection. I want to once again introduce to you Shirley Voorhees. As we mentioned before, she's a certified master trainer in the area of the DISC, and Shirley, take it away.
Thank you, Cheryl. Good afternoon, ladies. I trust that those of you who were on our last call have found that what you learned was useful. You probably have identified your own personality style by now, and hopefully have begun to see the patterns in those that you live with, work with, and are friends with. I would imagine that there are some on this call today who were not on our last one. And if that's the case, I hope that you were able to listen to the recording of that call and download the handout that was there. But if you were not able to do that before today, I want to take just a few minutes here at the beginning of this call to do a quick review of the DISC model of human behavior. And I want to do that because we need to understand the model before we can begin to apply it appropriately. So in the last session, we said that at birth, we come hardwired with certain characteristics that form our personality style. And that is not something that we have control over. God made that decision for us, giving us the personality traits that we need to do what He created us to do. I also explained that we are all a unique blend of the 4 basic personality styles, and that our blend is the filter that colors absolutely everything that we see and do. We add our upbringing, education, culture, family, life experiences, and our responses to all of that. And that's what makes us uniquely who we are. It's what makes us distinctly qualified to carry out the purposes for which God designed us. Then I help you to see that there are patterns to our behavior. And when we begin to see and recognize those patterns in ourselves and in those around us, it helps us not only be more personally effective, but it also helps us to work better with others. So I want you to see the DISC model of human behavior again. It is best illustrated by a circle that is divided in half horizontally. The top half we're labeling outgoing. This represents those whose internal motor is fast-paced. They tend to be energetic and optimistic about life, and they have a lot of enthusiasm. The bottom half of the circle is reserved. These people are slower paced. They prefer doing things at a slower pace because they want to make sure that they have all the information they need to make wise decisions. They tend to be more cautious and tentative in their approach to life. Next, we're going to divide the circle vertically. On the left are those who are task-oriented, and they are more concerned with getting results and getting things right. On the right are those who are more people-oriented. They're all about relationships and friendships, and they will go to great lengths to preserve those relationships. Having divided the circle both ways, we end up with 4 quadrants and assign a letter to each of those quadrants, D, I, S, and C. And we ascribe words beginning with each of those letters that are descriptive of that personality style. Now, in order to illustrate and help you understand each of those quadrants, in our last session, I introduced you to 4 different women, Deanne, Izzy, Sydney, and Clarice. For time's sake today, I'm not going to go into each one of those like I did before, but I just want to quickly review their descriptive words because this is going to help us as we move into our next session. Deanne represents those who are outgoing and task-oriented, and some of her observable traits are that she is dominant. That means she is a strong woman. She's decisive and can make quick decisions typically. She's dynamic in her ability to lead. She is a doer in that she can accomplish a large amount of work in a short amount of time. She's very driven by results and productivity, and she is direct in her style of communication. Izzy is also outgoing, but her perspective is different. She is people-oriented. She's inspiring. People are just drawn to her naturally because of her vivacious personality. She's interactive. She likes to connect with a lot of different people. She's very influencing in that she likes to get people on board with whatever it is she's doing. She is impressive in her ability to connect with people. She knows a lot of people, and a lot of times they are high-level people. You might see a picture of her in her office with the president of the company and the chairman of such and such. You know, she just loves to connect with people. She's involved in everything and tends to be impressionable, and that just means that whatever she's doing right now, that's the best thing ever. So next I introduced you to Sydney, who lives on the bottom half of our circle because she is reserved and people-oriented. She's people-oriented just like the I, only for her, she likes one or two people at a time, not a whole bunch of people like the I does. Sydney is supportive. She loves to come behind and help. Tends to be shy, one of the sweetest people you would ever want to meet. Tends to be self-sacrificing, very steady in her moods and also in the way that she tends to work, and she tends to be sentimental. And last but certainly not least, there is Clarice. The attributes that best describe her reserved and task-oriented style are cautious. She is cautious about everything. She's competent, very conscientious about her work. She is contemplative. She thinks a lot about a lot of things. She's very careful in spending her money, in doing her work, and she wants everything that she does to be correct. So I know that was quick, but now that we're all on the same page, I'm excited for today's session because here is where you will begin to really see the benefit and power of this information. A lot of people stop with just understanding who they are. And while that's good for you to know who you are, it's better when not only you know who you are, but you can learn how to more effectively connect with other people. So it's like, what does it mean if I'm a D and you're an S? How do we communicate best together? So when we look at each of those quadrants and we see how different they are, it isn't hard to see how conflict could happen, is it? We had asked last time at the close of our last session if you would submit some specific examples of conflict that you've faced within your group or your planning team, but we didn't receive any. And you know what? I think the Lord may just have been in that. It really isn't necessary for us to have specific examples for this information, because I think you will find that as we talk about it globally, you'll begin to see how it could apply in your own particular situations. In the training that I do, we have a saying, you can't beware of something until first you are aware of it. And then I take it even further by saying, but once you are aware, then you can make a conscious choice to do something different. So what I want to do today is help you become aware. I want you to be aware of how you can work more effectively together by, first of all, knowing how you complement another personality style, what things to beware of, and what you can do to avoid some conflict-producing situations. And because we don't have time to go into each and every personality pairing, what I'm going to do today is just highlight how to work with someone of your own style and then someone who is your opposite style. But don't worry, because I have created a handout that will be posted along with this call that goes into each one, giving you 2 strengths, 2 struggles you may experience, and then 2 strategies for how to work better together. Does that sound good? So let's start with the outgoing, task-oriented D, who is working with someone who is also a D. Now, you might be tempted to think that working with someone who is just like you would be easy, but that is not necessarily the case, as you will see. Ds are likely to work well together if you share the same goals and direction. You both tend to like a fast-paced environment and are results-driven. However, since Ds have a very strong desire for control, where you may experience difficulty in working together is in a power struggle over who has that control. Ds also want to win. So if there is a disagreement, neither party will want to give up or give in. Being aware of that possibility, there are a couple things that you can do to help solve that problem. First, 2 Ds can work very well together if they have clearly defined areas of responsibility. In a prior position that I held, I worked with a gentleman by the name of JJ. He is a retired Canadian spy. For real. He is a very high off-the-charts D, and so am I. But we were able to work very well together. We knew that coming together as 2 Ds, we would be able to accomplish a large amount of work together. But this one area of having clearly defined areas of responsibility was key for us to be able to work together. We would come together, decide on our priority, what it was we wanted to accomplish, which is our next point. You have to make sure that your goals and your direction are agreeable to both people. And then we would decide what it is we were in charge of, and then each of us had our areas of work that we were able to do because it was clearly defined. If you have a D and an S on your team, it's good to remember that you are polar opposites. Just look at those 2 lists side by side and you can see how different you are. But let me tell you something. You each bring something very unique together as you team together to work on a project. Ds, you like to lead, and S-types like to follow. S's will help put feet to your ideas and your dreams. Where the rub could come would be in the fact that Ds are fast-paced and they want everything now, while S's are slower-paced and want to take their time in order to make sure things are done right. Ds, you also like change. It invigorates you and you see it as a challenge. It's like the next hill to climb. S's are often resistant to change, however, because they prefer for things to stay the same. Their motto is pretty much, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. As we noted earlier, D's are very direct in their style of communication. But when working with an S, it's important to watch your tone. If you're harsh with them, they're likely to tune you out and disengage. They may still be looking agreeable on the outside, but inwardly, they are not. They are not listening to you. Remember, as we said, that S's are supportive. They love to help. They want to please you so much that they may be hesitant to start on something unless you have given them explicit instructions on how you want it done. So for their sake and yours, give clear instructions and they will do their dead level best to do it just the way you want it. So we're going to move over to our Izzy type personality. Remember, I's are also outgoing, but their priority is people. When you're working with another I, both of you are fast-paced, and you're generally pretty easygoing, so you should have a lot of fun together. Where you might have an issue is that you may have a tendency to talk too much, and because you're both easily distracted, you may not get as much accomplished as you need to. So here's what you can do. Be committed to turn your talk into action. And then you're going to need to develop an action and accountability plan to help you stay focused on what you're working on together. I's, your opposite style is C. You're a great balance for each other, and if you will allow it, you can learn a lot from each other. The potential for conflict comes because not only is your pace very different, but so is your priority. You, as an I, are fast-paced and very people-oriented. But the C is slower-paced, wanting to gather information before making a decision, and they want to do things carefully and cautiously to avoid mistakes. I's also tend to process outwardly, talking things out, while C's process internally, and they don't tend to talk until they've had a chance to think everything through thoroughly. That can be really frustrating on the parts of both parties. In one training session that I was doing with some high-level executives, I had a gentleman who was a high C. He had a high I son. And when I covered this particular point, the fact that I's process outwardly and C's process internally, I could see the light bulb of understanding just turn on above his head. And he said, "Oh my word. Now I know why my son talks all the time." He said, "That has frustrated the heck out of me because he talks and talks and talks. And because I process internally, I haven't understood that until now." It was really a powerful moment for him. To avoid hurt feelings or conflict, I's, don't misunderstand the C's silence as meaning that they don't like you. It isn't personal. And then to work effectively together, you need to allow them time to do quality work. For those of you who are the supportive S type, when you're working with someone of your same style, you'll find that you're both very easygoing and pleasant. And since both of you are slower paced, there shouldn't be any issue there. However, because you're both so accommodating, it may be hard for you to make a decision. It's like, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know. What do you think we should do? You also both tend to talk around things, sort of beat around the bush. It's admirable that you don't want to offend anyone, but when you're working together, it can be very counterproductive and frustrating if you don't communicate clearly. So what can you do once you're aware of these things? Well, first of all, one of you will have to be willing to take the lead on whatever it is you're working on. You'll also need to be willing to initiate more and also be more decisive. Otherwise, you're not going to get very much accomplished. If you are an S working with a dominant type D, remember, you like to follow and they like to lead. You're a great support for this type of leader. Just be aware that their need for instant action may be exhausting to you, since you prefer to move more slowly in getting things done. And also your priorities are very different. You are conscious of the people involved in doing something and the task, and the D is task focused. It's all about getting the task done for them. To work more effectively with a D, S-types, you will need to have strongly held boundaries in place in order to not feel run over by them. They probably won't like it when you put those boundaries in place. However, they respect someone who is willing to stand up for themselves. You also need to be decisive and then stick to your decisions. Don't let them move you from your decision. Don't second guess yourself. We finish this circle of discussion with those who fall into the reserved and task-oriented quadrant like Clarice. As you work with another C, you will find that you both enjoy working hard on projects and tasks, and you both have a great focus on detail. But you will also find that you may each have a different view of the right way to get the task done. And when things aren't going your way, you will both have the tendency to quickly shut down and become uncommunicative. So, in order to work together better, be willing to compromise if the other person has a different way of doing something. You will also need to resist the temptation to withdraw. We all know that communication is the key to successful relationships. Nothing is gained by becoming sullen and withdrawn. When you're working with your opposite Cs, you and the I-type personality, again, are a great complement to each other and a really good balance. But you have a need for caution, and they have a need for spontaneity. They tend to sometimes want to throw caution to the wind and fly by the seat of their pants, as the expression goes. But that doesn't work for you. You are nothing if not cautious. You can really get put out by the fact that they talk so much, because for you, your thoughts are more private, and you don't typically talk unless you have something important to say. If you're going to work well together, you'll need to change your expectation of them. Do not expect them to have the same attention to detail as you do. It's just not going to happen. And I know that this last thing is going to be tough, but you will need to learn to smile. I know that sounds funny, but C's emotions don't often make it to their faces, and eyes are watching your face to see if you like them. I want to tell you a story so that you understand just how important this is. Another gentleman that I worked for, very high C, he was a nuclear submarine engineer in his previous life. And he had a very high I little daughter. She would always ask him, "Daddy, do you love me?" And he would say, "Of course, Alexandra, I love you." And one day she had asked him that several times. And so many times that he was just really frustrated by it. It's like, oh my goodness. And so he said to her, "Alexandra, yes, I love you. Why do you keep asking me that?" And her little chin quivered as she said, "Because you never smile at me, Daddy." That broke his heart. Of course he loved his daughter. And he loved her so much that he went in the bathroom, shut and locked the door, and stayed in there for 2 hours trying to learn to smile in a way that would communicate to this little girl how much he loved her. What I've been sharing with you is easy to understand, and it's simple to apply. Notice that I did not say that it's easy to apply, because it isn't, especially in times of conflict. But here's what I know. Those of us who are Jesus followers are admonished over and over again in the scriptures to get along with each other. Romans 12:18 says, "If possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men." And Jesus said that all of the law can be boiled down to just 2 things: love God and love others. And just so that we would know how serious he was about that, God said, "You can't say you love me if you're at odds with your brother or your sister." See, those 2 things that fulfill the law are connected. Most conflict is a matter of preference, not conviction. Let me explain that. Each of us has a preference in the way that we think and act. That's the filter through which we process life that I was talking about in the beginning of today's session. I prefer to do things at a fast pace. My husband, however, likes to do things more methodically and slowly. Can that be a cause of contention? Absolutely it can be, if we're not careful. A conviction, on the other hand, is a belief that we hold so strongly that we're willing to die for it. Now, I don't know about you, but there are only 1 or 2 things that I hold so dear that I would die for them. But ladies, so often we're willing to go to the mat with someone over something that is a preference. We fight, spew heated words, and kill relationships over stuff that isn't worth dying for. As a mom, I have always hated it when my kids were at odds with each other. It just grieved my heart. And I believe that it grieves the heart of our Heavenly Father when His kids don't get along. We can minimize conflict by learning to appreciate, value, and celebrate the differences rather than fighting against them. Again, in Romans 12, we find these words in verse 10. "Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor." Ladies, let's hold that preference over any personal preference. Let's prefer one another, honor one another, and love each other. That is what will make our Father happy. I hope that today has been meaningful to you. We're going to do one more session, as Cheryl said, and that will be on October 23rd. We're going to be talking about how to celebrate your team.